Hello, dear viewers. We're starting a new series of shows called The Solution, based on the writings of Bala Sulam. We took out excerpts that explain his economic model, along with Rav Dr. Michael Laitman and our friends. We're going to try to learn together these writings. Hello, Dr. Laitman. Hello to all our friends. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Laitman, before we go to the source, Kidvei Dor HaAcharon, the last generation, what's their importance in our time? Why did he write them, Bala Sulam? What is he trying to convey to us through these writings? Humanity is going through a very special process where, apart from the normal evolution, what's happening with nature in huge, long proportions of time, we as the human society are going through a much more accelerated process, quicker process. Throughout history, we saw how we went through all kinds of very different forms, opposite forms of building our society, industry, technology, and everything. A person changes. A person changes throughout his life, from generation to generation. Things are different, especially since we are now in our time where time has become much more condensed, compressed, and we see that every month and every day bringing tons of news and our relation to the world, to humanity. The person has changed. People have changed. We're switching quickly to different infrastructures. We're not managed by some king or some party or government. Everything is through the social network. Everything is more open around. Human society determines many things for itself. And we see how, despite various manipulations that we have in the network, the result is that gradually the control of our life is being transferred from those that used to hold all of society to society itself. And that's a very big transformation that we're in this process, but we see that it's happening on the one hand. On the other hand, we see a technological revolution where we built everything on technologies that were actually would only increase the national assets in each country. Now we're switching to technologies like robots, nanotechnology, printers that allow us to create all kinds of things anywhere. It's only starting now to really come into our lives. It's still a little bit tomorrow, but we see that many things have changed in industry and commerce and supply than how things were before. There weren't supply lines from place to place, so that in every place you can immediately do all kinds of necessary things for the local place. We see that also the general process that society is going through, not technologically. In our society, we have the general society in the whole world. We're going through a process of the collapse of the previous systems, whether we want to or not. And that's what I envision, that we're before a complete collapse of the old systems, that we're used to them and we hold on to them, to systems that will work in a different manner. We're on the verge of bankruptcy of industry, general global industry. We see that whether we like it or not, people are becoming more limited in their buying capability, services that they'll demand. Today they're buying more and more things that really have to do with basic necessities and use services in a much more modest manner. And all this is influencing the industry and commerce. And whether we like it or not, we see that if not us, then in a state of collapse will arrive at a state where apparently the society will reduce its consumption to rational needs and only necessary services. And in that way, we need to see our future. On the other hand, also that it's the resources of the planet, the ecology and all that, all the means that we can, the resources from the land that we can receive. Therefore, all the problems, we have to see that it's leading us to a different way of organizing life, different shape, a new human society. Baal Sulam wrote about this in the last generation. He wrote it 70 years ago, approximately. But these writings were written in a way that he wanted to already submit them to the world. They're handwritten. They weren't submitted in a way that they could be submitted to the world. They're in his handwriting in our archives. And based on that, we printed the book, The Last Generation. And we arranged it how we see that he wrote so that anyone can use it. But still, you can learn a few things from there. I just want to emphasize that it's not that he's a socialist and wanted to cause propaganda or advertise socialism, but rather he sees a process that humanity must go through from the beginning of the development of man until the end. He sees a process, very defined process, 6,000-year process, especially where he takes the last stage of humanity. And we're already in stages where we need to reach the last format of the human society, and this format must be similar to the general nature, which we can say from the side of nature, because we have the natural sciences. Nature is in a round state, integral state. Its systems are connected to one another. And everything that we check in one place influences on all the other systems and places. And also society, according to his perspective, must become a unified society, connected. A society that has rational necessities only, because a man's body doesn't need more than he needs to exist. And all of our egoistic desire, he has to receive filling through inner development. Therefore, from there, he built a picture, the future vision, that regardless of the technology, or we will need to supply to everyone equal standard of living, because in our body we're not that different from one another. Of course, there's habits, etc., but at the end of the day, these are the things that we have to give to the body. And services that our body needs, what every person, family needs. But all our development beyond that does not need to be toward creating a surplus of things that we have no need for, where we are only filling the shelves with those things. People are starting to see that it doesn't give them satisfaction. We see desperation in society, especially in those countries where they apparently have everything. So it turns out that the development of man has to be through the connection between people, so that society gets a round form like nature, an integral form. That's his attitude. The first quote that we chose, these are excerpts from the solution from Baal Sulam. Somebody can suggest a real solution, and it can all be brought into one channel. But before I start, I would like to tell people who would like to know my feelings, my party feelings. I wanted to ask, what does a Kabbalist have to do with economy? He's a Kabbalist. He deals with development of man, nature of man, and suddenly we see that he's giving an economic model that wouldn't embarrass any financial person. We learn Kabbalah about the general nature. That's all based on the desire to fill ourselves, so desire to receive. This exists in all levels in nature, and its levels divide our world into 4 levels: vegetative, inanimate, this person is above, and he can supply things for himself, he can open for himself, standard of life. We see, to the extent that the will to receive is small, he doesn't have to move to do anything. But the vegetative, to supply to himself his life, he opens up and he closes. He has a process of multiplying. His life is short according to the season. He already belongs to the seasons, the nature, day, night, etc. The animate has the greater will to receive. He builds in himself an ability to move from one place to the other. It's not enough for him to be in one place, so he moves around. And we see he's not so dependent on seasons. He has his own private life, etc. But he's close to nature. But the human level is disconnected from seasons and day and night and places. He's freer because his desire is very big, and to fill it he needs this freedom, he needs wisdom, he needs to develop from day to day. His development is only to supply his growing will to receive. That's how we develop. When we're talking about the entire world to receive altogether, we're talking about inanimate, vegetative, and animate, because they don't really have freedom of choice. They only have instinctive development, so there's not a lot to talk about. There are those forms around us, but the human who every moment feels inside himself a burst of his ego, of his desire to receive, to conquer the world, to want more and more. He doesn't live based on his instincts, but he has to each time develop all kinds of new feelings for himself. He's the problematic one, let's say. He's the problematic element in the general picture. That's why we're talking about him. Because when we talk about the human, we're talking about a creature that has to reach some purpose, according to the whole process that nature is going through. That in this process, a person has free will. He can determine for himself to what extent he matches nature, how much he understands it, how much he's in mutuality with nature, understands the laws of nature, and he's in harmony with nature, with the rules of nature. This is a problem with man. On the one hand, he understands the laws of nature, and he understands it's worth it for him, but he also has this evil inclination that doesn't want to maintain the laws of nature, because it awakens in him a rejection. He has to limit himself, he has to bend himself. He doesn't learn nature to change himself. The more that nature develops, he doesn't want to be in this direction, actually. And this evil inclination in man that only wants to go and fill itself, doesn't matter what it will be. Like a little kid saying, I want this. And we understand it's not for his own good, because there's other conditions, there's an environment. There's something that he has to do against his limited desire, small little desire that doesn't understand. But he wants. That's why with kids we try to limit them and teach them that it's not for their own good, and that we try to do it, and that our love is obligating us to look after them and limit them in a soft way. But when we are like the big kids facing nature, there's no father saying, no, you should listen. It's worth it for you to see what's happening in nature. And you need to limit yourself and not just do what you feel like doing based on your inner instincts. But we do whatever we feel like. And with the help of our wisdom, science, technology, we're arriving at the implementation of all our worst desires. So if we look at humanity, it's an example of kids that didn't receive the correct education, that have no mommy and daddy above them telling them this isn't okay to live like this, that you're destroying yourselves like this and you're suffering. You have to choose another way and behave in another way. And we don't have a mommy and daddy, so that's why we're suffering. Then comes the wisdom of Kabbalah, and a Kabbalist like him, Baal Sulam, and provides us with light for the way. How we truly need to be, how to correct our behavior, to advance with confidence, security, joy for life. Also on the economic level, yes, that's the main thing for us. Because economy is food. We belong first and foremost to the animate level and the human level, culture, education, etc. But first of all is bread. A person has to supply for himself. He must have an apartment with everything he needs in the apartment. He needs systems to provide him with basic necessities. That's the foundation. And beyond that, what he does, that's what Kabbalists speak of. Therefore, because we're speaking about the desire to receive in nature, at the end of the day, we reach man, who's the source of the problem, and who is the only element in nature capable of changing itself and then bringing all of nature to a balanced state, to harmony. I want to ask Rav Laitman. Bala Sulam writes that in his opinion, the socialist concept of equal distribution is preferred by everyone. We didn't read it. Let's read. And I want to admit that the socialist idea, which is justified and equal distribution, I see as truest. Because it's enough, there's enough to supply us all. So why do we need to have this war between systems from generation to generation? Let's distribute things equally and put an end to all our troubles. It's not because he's a socialist by nature that he was born like that and educated like that. We know where his comes from. He was a judge from Warsaw in a place with 3 million Jews. He was educated in a yeshiva. He has no socialist background at all. But because he sees that the future vision is singular, equal, then in our world it's expressed in that word, socialism. Socialism already has all kinds of warped. We already saw the parties and countries and regimes that call themselves socialist. From National Socialist to socialism in Russia, etc., who are all have only ruined this name. Socialism is from socio, from the people, from society, who precisely equal distribution, equal responsibility, supplying everyone. That people live not just to make more, to compete in making more money, but they live to maintain themselves in a nice, equal way. Because in that, for sure, the world will be in harmony with nature. And all the extra will to receive that wants more and more, we should direct to things where we aren't ruining the planet. There's no limitation for our development there. People were not born equal. Some are more talented, some are less talented. So how does that work with the harmony? Equal distribution means that everyone will receive what they need in relation to him. If I need more meat and you need more milk, and somebody just wants wheat to eat, somebody wants mango, it's based on the person and his nature and his habits. You can change habits, but at the end of the day, we're supplying a person with what he needs in a rational manner, and we're trying to make it like that for everyone. Of course, it's not equal in details, but it's equal to the class level. Everyone receives in a way that's enough for him. He doesn't need surplus. We're talking about supplying the basic things, like you do a calculation in the country. What does every family need on average? A house, a fridge, an oven, all kinds of machines in the home, maybe a car next to the house, clothes. You can make an accounting, more or less. That's the average family. And the rest, what will a person do with his inclinations? This has to be directed to the inner development, spiritual development. And the main thing is in connection. a person can see how much they're receiving filling for their big desires. That really only there they're receiving filling. And we see that if we don't go in this way, then we still get this limitation from nature. And the whole industry and standard of living and attitude to life that we develop beyond necessity is now collapsing. So what is the reason actually that until today no regime has succeeded in distributing things equally? No regime placed it as a goal in any place. We saw, as we see that there's like socialist regimes in Scandinavia. It appears that way, but they're just slightly more concerned about each and every person, about their general standard. We see how much suicide there is, and desperation, and divorce. We can't see anything apart from the numbers. We can't say that people are especially satisfied right now. Even though the standard of living is high. And there's gaps between the rich and poor, though. And apart from that, in Russia, they didn't make socialism. Each regime was managed only to raise the country to a stronger level in army. So to force the world, to conquer the world with force. Just like Germany, it's the same thing, it's the same nature. Exactly. Both wanted to, at the end of the day, conquer the world with force. It's similar to certain Islam movements at the moment. You can't call it socialism. Did Bala Sulam mean that socialism that he's describing will be implemented only after the society will be corrected? No. How can it be in harmony with nature if the regime isn't with equal distribution, doesn't supply man with his corporal needs? We're talking about, let's look at the end. We need to reach a state where everyone on the planet are satisfied. That's the only way we can have a complete society. That's the only way we'll be in balance with nature. So how can you jump to the end of development? How can you supply everyone with everything according to their desires? Everything. So it works out, and so that everyone is satisfied. Here there has to be special education, so everyone will not understand that only in the equal distribution, like relative distribution and justified, that we all decide about the standard of living. But it has to be the same throughout the world. We have to take that into account. It's a huge plan. And apart from that, how we raise a person to another level of development so that he won't only develop through things that he wants, he also needs to get security for tomorrow. His pride, his jealousy, his lust, his self-respect will be filled by other sources. Instead of working hard or taking advantage of other people to buy something else, to rise above the people more. And it goes on and on. Nobody's happy. At the end of the day, nobody's happy. They're all in some kind of competition. And if you ask them why, they say that's how the world is. Therefore, since it's an opposition to nature, then it's becoming destroyed. We're seeing, and we'll see in the coming months, how much these systems that are not connected to our basic necessities will go through a crisis. They're going bankrupt. I want to ask, he says here that our planet has enough to supply us all. Our planet can feed and supply, they say, I don't think it's limited, up to 200 billion people. I heard even bigger numbers, also from my teacher. We don't need to think about the number of people that can be on the earth. If we're thinking about the balance, the harmony, it will come from the side of nature. People who don't want to multiply nowadays, the birth rate is going down in Europe, in many countries. It's not a problem. Today we see, and also according to statistics, we see how we're throwing out food, how much we don't want to share. We could already today be sharing food with everyone in abundance. What we're creating today to hold on to prices and throw stuff out, this relation to society is what's destroying us, the way we relate to society. And the resources of the planet are decreasing, there's no problem. Soon we're going to switch to new technologies where we won't need those natural resources. We'll be in harmony with nature, we'll be able to discover new energy sources altogether. We'll have unlimited energy. And if you just decrease industry to the necessity level, you'll see that you'll only need 10% of what we have today. Today you calculate altogether how much a country produces based on growth. If my car with thousands of other cars are standing in traffic, and I'm with all these anger and thousands of drivers next to me and everybody's frustrated, are we burning? We're burning tons of gas. Your statistics go up, right? Yes. And my state goes down. So how is it possible that your signs teach about my life, about standard of living, how I relate to my life, the beauty of my life? You can say we went up 2%, and me, in my eyes, we went down a few statistics in my feeling. Everything is not in man's favor. What additional energy sources are you talking about? First of all, I think that only by cleaning ourselves from all the industry and commerce, the excess that a person really doesn't need, but rather we taught him we advertised to him, we educated him for overconsumption, exaggerated consumption. When we get rid of this, we'll have enough for sure. And apart from that, our approach to nature, getting close to nature, will allow us to discover sources of energy. Today we're not capable of grasping. Can you give me an example? That if that hurricane that is going through there in the States, over there in Louisiana and all those places where it was 7 years ago, if you take its energy It's enough for the entire planet for years. Between us, to the extent that I spoke with scientists and I understood from them, today we already have so many options that are not dependent on gas and oil and burning them. But still there's interests that are not allowing things to develop, that don't want to let go. It's not green energy that we're going to help us grow wheat. That's also a big waste. The true things, they're not giving them away. Anything that we developed ourselves to serve man has become some mutation that operates for the bad of a person. That's our ego. I'm not blaming anyone. If I was in their place, I would do the same thing. And now if I'm sitting on a barrel of oil and that's how I make my living, and somebody says, I suggest you replace the oil with some kind of seeds you can get out of your pipe, I'll kill him. What's he doing? He's bringing me to bankruptcy. That's how it is in everything. Happens. So we don't have to look at industry and see what we have to replace. There's solutions for everything. But we have to approach from another place, that we have no choice. We have no choice. I'm not talking about the natural resources that we need to maintain or not, or ecology. What we're doing with the planet. But rather the crisis is much faster, and it's going to finish us off. It's cleaning us. It's taking people out to the street from the work market, and their buying power is limited. You have to supply them with basics. So whether you like it or not, through the blows, we're coming to the same format. Bala Sulam also wrote in this excerpt, why do we need this tragic war that's ruining our lives from generation to generation? Which war is he talking about? All wars about control. And if you come out with the integral education now, where you say our planet and all of us in nature are obligated to be in harmony, all the systems, like we're learning from science that we must be in harmony with nature, then the harmonious format is socialism, where you cancel out competitiveness, control, wars. There's nothing. And then you live on Earth like a human, like animals, that only organize their place in the correct way, where they live, their supplies correctly, everything they need. But the whole human part of us, it's inner development, cultural, educational, spiritual. Everyone, according to how much we supply these inner needs and how much we can develop him, that's what people enjoy. Because at the end of the day, a person's spiritual desire, he brings it down to corporality, and you think in that way you're going to fill him. And it doesn't fill him. He's still suffering. You see what's happening in the most developed countries. 50 or 60 years. Who's happy in the last decades? You see, according to desperation, drug use, all the results. People don't want to get married. People don't want to have kids, maintain a family. What are they missing? You're not filling the human part of them. You're only filling the animal part of them. And this animal part they don't want anymore. What is there? What is there in this competition? It's not making us happy. Just this pride, it's also going gradually. The more you advertise it's important, then he's still attracted to it. But people are growing. We can continue on this path from all sides. At the end of the day, you have to reach a decision that being in harmony in society and with nature at the corporal level, and to develop without limitation on the spiritual educational level, and to differentiate between these two levels. Because on the animate level, what do I need? A house, a washing machine, all the things I have at home. I need those things. I need a study. I need a car. I need a little bit of work. Where are we going to find everyone work? But we can develop it. We'll develop education. Social connections. We got to get them into lectures and workshops and projects on promoting the connection. And there's work in that for everyone, and unlimited development. And person will get a lot out of it. This is the cultural and spiritual development you're talking about. Can you explain it a bit? There's a slight difference because there's two parts in man. Some people feel only pleasure through the connection in society, with the friends, with the greater society, with the discussions on the grass, with a bit of development, entertainment and connection. And there's some people that want to go in deeper into the connection in society, and they find the inner hidden forces, which is the spiritual world. So it depends on the nature of man. But at the end of the day, everyone, through the general connection between them, will come to discover the next level of human existence, which is spirituality. Spirituality meaning we're reaching a connection between us, not through our will to receive that we're feeling, but rather in our will to influence, our mutual will to influence one another, to bestow. And in that way, a person sees himself unlimited and discovers the upper nature, another force in nature that exists apart from our will to receive and our will to bestow. And then he lives between these two forces, and he feels the upper life, an additional level. In addition to the animate level and the human level, there's still a different level of perception of reality. There's another higher level, and we're right on the verge of entering that level. Throughout the years, throughout history, whenever there were revolutions, when humans came to some block in the road, in other places, like in Russia and Germany, that element of the spiritual world is not clear. What are we anticipating? I'm talking about spirituality that's in a person. Those desires in a person that he cannot fill, that aren't intended to be filled with all kinds of corporal games, all kinds of filling in this world. You tell me in advertising, if you buy this, you'll be happy. If you use this, you'll be happy. And it's not that I'll be happy. You as a manufacturer and someone who profits, you'll be happy. And I'll just run to work harder and buy to fulfill your desire. But you're confusing me into thinking that I need it. And with these manipulations, you're working on people instead of his free time, instead of him doing all kinds of things according to his nature and spirit. He has to do things according to what you want. And this life does not look corrected. Why can't I really discover what I want and not be under the control of advertising, under the control of people that want to make a profit off of me? Why isn't it enough for me to work 2 or 3 hours a day and supply myself with all kinds of things like I learned from my teacher in grade 3 or 4? I heard in school. She was already very old, and she said, I'm jealous of you that you, you'll be in socialism, and that you'll only work 4 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day, and all the other hours you'll go fishing. You'll have a hobby, you'll have a pastime. Maybe you want to collect things. Maybe you want to play something. You'll develop in some manner. That's what I was told as a child. As I grew up, I saw that instead of 8 hours, we're working 10 hours. And what free time, and there's no free time. A person comes home, he has a couple of hours left, he sees where to invest a part of his salary to make a few more pennies. Maybe he'll get thrown out of work, and he doesn't finish getting a profession. He already needs a new profession, more courses, more learning. For what is all this? To just supply the exaggerated desires, the unjustified desires of a few people, the wealthy, that are running the world in this manner. For what? Even my ego doesn't want it. If you leave me on my own, I want to lie on the couch and rest and work just as much as I need to. Like a gynecologist. They're very lazy. You're always injecting them with new desires. Buy, buy, buy. It ruins the person that he cannot develop. Why shouldn't we have university courses, etc. for everyone? Why shouldn't people spend half the day there? Why shouldn't people rise up to the level of human? Why shouldn't he understand where he's living? Why shouldn't he build his family correctly? His children, first of all, he needs to learn how to educate children. We don't learn that. When does he have time to be with his kids? So what's the point of educating him to be a mother, a father? He needs to be with his kids a few hours a day. What's the problem? Once upon a time, kids grew up next to their parents. Today, I see at 6 o'clock in the morning, they take those kids and they drop them off in some place. Our lives are completely warped. How can we calculate happiness? Where's this calculation? According to what? A person doesn't deserve to live in this manner. We became slaves to someone. This someone is hiding very well. Rav Laitman, I want to ask, at the end of the paragraph, he really gives the foundation of the system. Let's divide the work up between us in an equal way and put an end to our troubles. How do you divide the work in an equal manner? Each and every one needs to receive a role according to their capabilities, and if there's people that don't have a role and they don't need to do anything. They'll study, they'll do other things. There's many things that we can do with projects that don't come through work. Organize people to clean the streets. Look what we did to the planet. There's tons of work in an equal way. Yes, so that they'll feel, first of all, that it's an equal responsibility. Just like we all receive an equal, then the responsibility is also equal. That everyone receives either according to hours. Hours is not also so correct. Because if I like physical work and I get that work, so what is 4 hours for me? And if I'm lazy by nature, for me half an hour is a problem. So how can we measure the investment of each and every one? You touched a very sensitive point. How do I measure? You work 10 hours in front of the computer to do your economic business. And now if we put you into physical work, in half an hour you're finished, right? Right? Or the opposite. I've seen other people. Just tell me what to do, little head. I'll take that from to there and that to there. And that's what I do, and I feel fine. To reach equal, you have to educate a man so that he'll feel that he's in a society that's going toward equality, toward bonding, that he'll feel his obligation to be equal to others. Where will it come to him from? And here there's the big problem, that we get to salaries. What kind of salary does a person need to receive to work without you placing a policeman over him, without telling him this you have to do, but rather he looks for himself to do something that is good for society. Apart from education, at the end of education there has to be a higher salary, that from reaching equality, that he's reaching the correct contribution to society, that he's making an effort for society, he is merged in society, and that's where he finds the upper spiritual life. You have to give him fuel. You have to give him a goal. Without a goal, he won't work. Without that, there won't be equality. Every socialist society broke without that. That's why I say integral education. I mean, at the end of the day, that through education, in the meantime, we're organizing them to be connected. From this connection, they'll start to feeling without any words, because these words can push people away. They don't understand. It can make them reject it. But by workshops and those connections, they'll start to feel this. There's in this connection between us, there's some upper force, some upper feeling. Life is superior. It's not just social life that we enjoy, that we're people hanging out together, sitting on the grass and singing songs, but rather that in the connection between us, there's an upper life where I feel myself unlimited, above my body, above time and place and movement, where I feel the force of bestowal, which is above the force of reception that exists in our world. And it turns out that we rise to a world of bestowal instead of a world of reception. Despite us in our world and our works, equal distribution, etc., we did at this level what we need to do. Like this table, we organize things properly, but because this equality between us, we found the higher spiritual way of life, and we as people are rising to that level. You have above this table another table, and that's where we live. And that's where you arrive at the feeling of life. That's what a person is expecting. Without this salary, you cannot awaken man to not have stress, no obligations, but rather himself will want to invest in society because he's an egoist. You have to show him this great salary. At the moment, our economic messages does not have the message of salary, spiritual salary. At what stage do we need to tell them this, to convey this message? First of all, you have to convey it at the level, like we learn from Torah, sorry that I'm using this example, but that what's written in the Torah, that a person comes to an old person and asks him how to rise to a spiritual level, and he himself is an egoist. To rise to a spiritual level, that's called to go through conversion. He said, don't do to your friend what you hate to do to yourself. First of all, you have to reach harmony in society, and don't think of something higher, because when you reach that level, You try and you're close to it. You gradually yourself become ready to hear the other half. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And when you reach this and hear it a little bit, then you're starting to think about the result on the spiritual level. But the stage before, what is the stage before? We only need to speak about the form of the beautiful life that we organize according to the laws of nature in an equal manner, in a manner that we're all equal. We're all in one boat. Friends, Rav Laitman, it's very interesting, but we're out of time again. Before we manage to get into everything, that was the first in a series of shows called The Solution, based on the writings of Baal Sulam. Thank you, Rav Laitman. Thank you, all the friends that were with us, and be with us in the next programs. Thank you, and goodbye.